Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to check if everyone can hear me loud and clearly. If not, just let me know, put your hand up, or if there's anything in that regard that is any technological issues that's causing, just let me know. We'll see if we can fix in the back end. Um, and yeah, I'll just do a very brief introduction. Thank you for joining us on the another session for Wynleigh, where we discuss ISO related matters. Today we have the Managing Director, Tony Cunningham, presenting again, as he has done in the past few weeks, and we've had some good discussions. So with any further delay on my end, I'll hand over to Tony to kick off the session. Please feel free to post questions in the Q&A or the chat. Christina and myself will answer as we go along, and we will have a bit of a Q&A at the end where we can have a discussion and go from there. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. And yeah, without further ado, Tony, thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and welcome to everyone that's online. Welcome especially to the Assurance and Risk Management Alliance members in this time zone, another acronym, ARMA EMEA, as well as our colleagues and invited guests. Thank you for joining us across the region. We'll begin formally in just a moment while others are still connecting, but I want to thank you for taking the time to join this session. Today's topic is focused on how managing directors should engage with ISO management systems. So we'll be looking at leadership behavior, governance, and how ISO systems can be used as a strategic tool rather than simply a compliance exercise. We'll start properly in a moment. Let me formally begin then. My background is available on LinkedIn, so I won't go into detail. I've spent many years working in the conformity assessment and ISO management system space, including involvement in early development of accreditation in South Africa, as well as the establishment of formal structures for auditor registration in Southern Africa. Currently, my external professional involvement includes participation in South African committees contributing to ISO TC 262. For those who are unfamiliar, that's the team that contributes to the guideline for ISO 31000. 31000 is focusing on risk management on an enterprise-wide basis, something that aligns very nicely with the way we're going to pitch things today. My other committee that I'm involved in is TC 176, and that team contributes to the revision of the ISO 9001 standard, which is the requirements for quality management systems. More importantly, that experience has reinforced a simple but I think important view that ISO systems are often underutilized at executive level. They're frequently treated as compliance mechanisms, when in fact they can be powerful tools for risk insight, performance management, and decision-making. We're going to touch on each of those topics in a moment. This perspective is also why I support the Assurance and Risk Management Alliance in Africa. And this is not a passive membership. It's not a passive membership group. But a growing professional group of people that are connecting risk thinking, standards, and assurance practices in a more integrated way. I'd encourage all of you to join ARMA EMEA and have your discussion there beyond simply this presentation today. They have a page on the LinkedIn platform, and you're able to join that under no obligation. And speak to the team that are there to understand more about the information that relates to this subject. In that context, both Wynleigh and Risk Group are proud founding sponsors of the ARMA EMEA institution or organization, the Alliance. And within our group, to tell you more about Wynleigh ICS operates as an independent certification body. That means we're very deliberate about maintaining clear separation between certification and consulting or training activities. And for that reason, training and client development support is delivered through the risk group. And that's a separate entity altogether. That gives us the assurance of proper governance integrity, impartiality, and alignment with conformity assessment requirements, particularly in accordance with our accreditation to ISO 17021 and to ISO 27006. So with that context in place, the focus of today's session is how managing directors should engage with ISO management systems in a way that delivers real strategic value. And we're going to take you through some ideas there on how you might want to apply this way of doing things. So what I'd like to focus on in this presentation is a shift in perspective mainly. For many organizations, ISO management systems are still seen as simply a compliance outcome, something you implement to get certified and then maintain to keep the certificate. But that view significantly underutilizes what these systems are actually capable of. At their core, ISO management systems are structured frameworks for running an organization with discipline, transparency, and intent. So today I will try and explore how executive leadership can use these systems as a strategic tool, not an administrative burden. So firstly, in terms of risk visibility, ISO systems, when properly implemented, provide a structured way of identifying, assessing, and monitoring risk across the entire organization. Not just operational risks, but strategic and systemic risks that leadership should be aware of. And secondly, performance improvement. These systems are designed around continual improvement, and when aligned with business objectives, they create a mechanism for measuring what matters and driving real performance gains, not just ticking boxes. Thirdly, better decision-making. Through reliable data, internal audits, and management reviews, leadership gains access to consistent evidence-based insights. That allows for more informed, defensible decisions. Finally, organizational governance. ISO systems introduce clarity around roles, responsibilities, controls, and of course, accountability. They strengthen governance structures without adding unnecessary complexity, or they can do. So the intention today is to move beyond the idea of ISO as a certification exercise and reposition it as a leadership tool for management and managing risk more specifically, driving performance and improving how the organization is run. Every director of a profit-making enterprise has a legal obligation to protect the organization against loss while simultaneously seeking value. ISO management system standards express this as risk and opportunity, and they explicitly require top management to connect the management system focused on by the particular standard to the organization's strategic direction and the outcome of that particular standard and related system. That's typically addressed through the context of the organization in Clause 4 and through planning in Clause 6. In South Africa, this responsibility is reinforced through the Companies Act, and in reality, similar obligations exist in most jurisdictions. So the question is not whether leadership should engage with ISO systems, but whether these systems are actually enabling directors to meet the responsibility that they are obliged to fulfill. In most organizations, this isn't happening. And that statement is important because everything we've just described, where ISO systems support risk visibility, strategic decision-making, and performance at executive level, is the intended design of these systems. But in practice, that's not always how they're being used. Instead, ISO systems are often positioned in the organization as operational tools. They're managed well, they're audited, they're maintained, but are not consistently integrated into how the executive decisions are made. And that gap is where the real opportunity sits. Because if the system is already in place, already resourced, already audited, then the issue is not implementation, it's engagement. And that gap is where a significant amount of value is lost. So if we accept that in most organizations this is not happening, the question becomes what needs to change? And the answer is not in redesign of the ISO standards. The standards already provide the structure, and many of you are aware that the main ISO standards, the legacy standards of ISO 9001 and 14001 are in a process of revision. 14001 has already been released in the 26 version, and we wait on 9001 for some time in September, the release to happen. But if I can give you a word of advice, don't start changing anything. The inherent requirements and the basic principles that are in each of those standards remain unchanged. And therefore, a change to the standard is not going to happen anytime soon, either of those two. And the fact of the matter is that what is there already can add significant value to any organization, even if there are nuanced requirements that are amended. So this approach that I'm suggesting changes how leadership engages with the structure of these ISO management system standards and the related management system that is developed to comply. So firstly, ISO systems must be owned at an executive level, not in an administrative sense, but in terms of strategic accountability. If it's part of how the organization is governed, it cannot sit entirely outside of the executive attention. Secondly, risk cannot exist as a separate exercise. It must be explicitly linked to the strategic objectives. And this will allow for leadership to continuously be aware of any issues that could affect performance, affect delivery, or in fact, sustainability of the organization. Thirdly, performance data must be used for decision-making, not just reporting. If information doesn't influence decisions, then it's not functioning as performance intelligence. Fourth, management reviews must evolve from compliance-based meetings into structured decision forums. The value is not in the agenda, it's in the decisions that come out of the meeting. And finally, internal audits must typically move beyond conformity checks, tick box exercises, if you like. Their real value is in insight. What's working, what's not working, and what needs to change. But if these shifts don't happen in the way that I've suggested, the system stops being a strategic tool and it's simply administrative in nature. We can make the shift and it can become a management tool of significant value to the organization and other interested parties. What is often missed in ISO management systems is that they are not a collection of clauses. They are structured in a management model. At the center of that model, it's a very simple idea of connecting strategy to execution or operational processes. It starts with strategy, and that's all about what the organization is trying to achieve. From there, the organization must understand its context. That includes internal and external factors, stakeholder expectations, and the environment in which the organization is operating. This shouldn't be an academic exercise. It should define the organization's exposure. And from that context, through understanding risk and opportunity, we can start to apply our thinking around planning the business processes, how they are controlled, how they're monitored and measured, and ensure that we have adequate preventive action to deliver the strategic intent that we've defined in our objectives. That then drives this planning element of the standard that we see in section 6, quite comprehensive in some of the standards. And planning shouldn't be a separate mechanism from our operations. It's part of the iterative cycle. It should be translating your context and strategic information into the business processes and how those processes are executed, how they are monitored and measured to ensure that they're within the set parameters that you've determined up front as part of the planning. If they are properly defined and controlled, they become a mechanism through which strategy is delivered consistently. So if this is done correctly, something important happens. Risk and opportunity are not managed separately, they're embedded into how the organization operates. As a result, processes and the associated controls are not arbitrarily designed, they're optimized based on what happens to the organization. Of course, this is where ISO systems move from documentation into the realm of management. A second critical aspect is consistency across the management system. ISO standards are structured so that each element builds on the next. Context reflects the organization's strategic reality. Policy expresses leadership intent. Objectives translate that intent into measurable outcomes. Planning, at the heart of each of these standards, integrates risk and opportunity into relation with the objectives that have been defined. And processes then are designed to deliver on the execution in a controlled and consistent manner. So if these elements are aligned, the system functions as intended by the standard. But if they're disconnected, if context doesn't reflect strategy, if objectives don't define meaningful outcomes, or if processes are not aligned to risk and opportunity, then the system becomes fragmented. And when this happens, it may still pass audits, but it typically won't support effective management. One of the most important aspects for managing directors to understand is that this structure is not unique to a single ISO standard. It's consistent, so the framework that we're speaking about is consistent across all ISO management system standards. In the past, we've referred to this as the high-level structure, and it is in fact a framework into which these ISO standards, like a template, what those are written in. And so there's no surprise that there are common clauses, common requirements, and the governance issues that we speak to are common across these standards as well. This means that whether you're working with a quality, environmental, health and safety, or an information security system, the underlying governance model is exactly the same. And that has a very important implication. Each standard is effectively focused on a particular category of organizational risk. For example, ISO 9001 focuses on the requirements for quality management and therefore addresses the protection against exposure to quality risks, particularly the risk of inappropriate services, service failure, product non-conformities, and of course the associated commercial and liability implications. On the other hand, ISO 14001 focuses on environmental risk, including legal compliance, and through understanding the perspective of environmental impact, we're able to protect against the inherent risks that we may be exposed to depending on what sector you're working in. how great or to a lesser extent those might be. Similarly, ISO 45001 addresses risks related to people, health, safety, and workplace exposure, and 27001 focuses on information risk, data protection, confidentiality, and cyber exposure. When individually viewed, these can appear as separate silos that are managed perhaps even effectively in their own right. But if they are viewed collectively, they can perform in a structured manner to manage or govern the organization's overall well-being and especially impact its risk profile. So once an organization has clearly identified its significant risk categories at an enterprise level, these standards can provide a consistent and aligned framework for managing them. And that's where integration becomes powerful. Not multiple systems, but a coordinated governance structure for managing risk across the organization. What this ultimately leads to is a shift from managing multiple systems to managing the organization in an integrated way. In many organizations, ISO systems are implemented separately. Quality sits in one area, environmental management in another, often integrated or combined with health and safety in another area of the business, and information security often operates independently. Each system may function well on its own, but collectively they can result in duplication, fragmentation, and inconsistent priorities. From an executive level, that makes it difficult to get a clear, consolidated view of organizational risk. An integrated approach changes that because the standards share a common structure and they can be aligned around the same context, the same strategic direction, and very importantly, the same governance processes. And that means that risk is not managed in silos, it's managed coherently across the organization. Decision-making becomes more consistent, oversight improves, and leadership gains a clearer line of sight across the organization's overall risk profile. So integration's not about combining documents or creating a single manual. It's about aligning how risk strategy and control are managed across the organization and its business processes. And that is where ISO systems begin to operate as a true governance framework, rather than a collection of compliance activities. To make this more tangible, let me share a practical example. I've personally seen this approach where ISO systems are properly aligned to strategy, risk, and operational control, significantly change an organization's risk profile. In one case, within a large mining operation, in those days, I was working in the consulting world, not certification. And the maturity of the system that evolved within this organization using these principles that I've spoken about demonstrated the effectiveness of the management system to an extent where their independent external risk auditors ultimately made a recommendation to their underwriter, the insurance underwriter, and based on their assessment, a 5% reduction in the organization's insurance premium was applied. Now, that's not what ISO sets out to do. It's not the objective of these standards, but it is a clear illustration of something that I believe is very important. When risk is well understood, well managed, and demonstrably controlled, external stakeholders, whether auditors, insurers, or regulators, gain confidence in what the organization is delivering, the outputs that it delivers, whether they are services or products. It's demonstrating a brand of significant value. And that confidence has tangible value. So the benefit of ISO systems when used effectively extends well beyond certification. It influences how the organization is perceived, how risk is priced, and ultimately how value is protected and enhanced. To conclude, if this perspective resonates with you, then the natural next step is not a single action, but a continuation of this conversation. Across many organizations, the opportunity is not the absence of ISO systems, but how effectively those systems are being used to support leadership decision-making and, of course, the related governance. Through the Assurance and Risk Management Alliance within this region, there's an active professional space where these ideas are being explored further, bringing together risk practitioners, auditors, and leaders who are focused on strengthening the link between risk standards, management system standards by ISO, and organizational performance. For organizations that are looking to go further, the focus becomes practical. That's in improving how the ISO systems are used at executive level, strengthening alignment between risk and strategy, and ensuring that management systems genuinely support decision-making and governance. Within that context, Wynleigh and Risk Group continues to work with organizations that are seeking to develop this capability in a structured and credible way. This is ultimately about improving how organizations are run and not just how they are certified. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the formal part of the session, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Tony, thank you so much for the presentation. Yeah, that was great. Very informative. Yeah, the floor is open, everyone. So if there's any questions, any burning questions you'd like to put in the chat or come off mute, we do have the time to do that now. So it's an open floor.
I either lost my audience or presented it absolutely perfectly. No questions.
Must have been the latter, Tony.
I would hope.
Right. No, perfect. Oh, thanks. I see a comment come through from Philip. Great. No, great. Yeah, Philip, just your comment there. Yeah, great. I think if there's a knowledge sharing and that can happen, that's fantastic. So yeah, great. Right. Just while we wait, if there's any questions, we will distribute a handout on the session, just a summary of what was spoken about post the session to those who attended. Yeah, and then we are available as Wynleigh for these type of discussions. I know Tony has had discussions in the past with organizations, just an hour to meet them on where they are within their certification journey. It's something I think we'll continue to do. So yeah, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks to all involved in making this happen.
Right. On that note, I think yeah, I think we can close the session unless there is any last minute questions. If not, we can always connect after the session as well, where needed. So right. Thanks all. Have a good day further, and yes, we'll hopefully see you in the next month's session as well. Here in middle June sometime. Right.
Thanks a lot.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks, Reinhard.
Reinhard,
Cheers
I'll
all.
see you tomorrow. Cheers.
Yes, see you tomorrow.
Bye now.
All right, bye.